Back at it here with the Kaufman Corner podcast. Time to talk some Royals baseball as we were wanting to do. Spring training actually not that far away. I forgot to hide the said guest. Oh my God, we've let it out of the bag.
Surprise ruined.
Yeah, real subtle how how I did that. Rany Jazayerli, Soren Petro with you. We will talk with the great Joe Sheehan. He'll be with us in a minute if we can find him. Something tells me we will. We'll get his thoughts. We thought today would be interesting to get the opinions of a noted baseball expert on what the Royals have done this offseason. You've heard Rany and I talk about it. You know what we think. What does somebody outside of the organization think about the offseason moves they made? Did they do enough? Can they contend? If not now, then when can they contend? What moves did he like, not like? Did they get enough bang for the buck? Did they spend enough bucks? We'll also talk about a contract for Bobby Witt Jr., perhaps. Get into the front office additions that have been made by the Kansas City Royals. Does Joe agree with building a new ballpark? You know, there was a override of a Frank White veto today. Looks like the ballot will be or will get to the ballot on April 2nd. So the voters of Jackson County will have a chance to extend the 3/8 sales tax to build a new ballpark. What does Joe think about that? We talk about all that right now here on the Kaufman Corner podcast.
You're listening to Kaufman Corner, the most in-depth analysis of the Kansas City Royals, breaking down the Royals like no one else can. Kaufman Corner is hosted by Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro. Rany is a co-founder of Baseball Prospectus, author of Rany and the Royals, and former columnist for Grantland, The Ringer, and The Athletic. Soren is the award-winning afternoon drive host of the program on Sports Radio 810 WHB in Kansas City. Kaufman Corner is proudly brought to you by Gann Asphalt and Concrete, Kansas City's nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor, making parking lot problems disappear since 1994. Free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project comes with a written warranty. Find them online at GannAsphalt.com or call 816-484-3338. Gann Asphalt and Concrete, one contractor, all things parking lot. Now, here's your hosts, Rany Jazayerli and Soren Petro.
And thank you very much, Curtis. Rany Jazayerli, Soren Petro with you as we talk a little Royals baseball. If you're catching us via the podcast, remember you can be a part of the conversation by joining us live. We stream normally it's Sunday nights at 10, but as we know, many of our Kaufman Corner viewers are also Chiefs fans, and the Chiefs game may have taken the party into the late night. And so we come to you on a Monday here today. If we can't do it on Sunday, we do it on a Monday. And Rany, we also come, this is not your normal home base, unless you've gone back to the 70s and thought wood paneling and wood trim was a good idea. You're coming to us from parts unknown. Is that correct?
Yes, either my wife has kicked me into the doghouse, or I am in Vail on my annual guys ski trip, and I'm talking to you from the second bedroom in our condo here. So if you hear boisterous laughing in the distance, that's probably just my buddies in the back. They've been instructed to stay out of this room, but the sound may carry. We'll see.
Do they follow set instructions? Are they the type of people that can be trusted to follow the instructions?
They are responsible adults.
Okay.
Let's put it that way. So yes, I'm hopeful, but there is a chance somebody forgets and somebody walks behind me, and it's a live show. We'll adjust on the fly like we always do.
We'll take it from there. All right, real quick before we welcome Joe Sheehan from the Joe Sheehan Baseball Newsletter, must read if you are a big time baseball fan. What's the one thing you want to hear from Joe? What's the one thing you think he's going to say? Give me any tidbit before we welcome in Joe that we think we're going to get out of Joe tonight.
That he loves the Royals and he's been lying to me all these years. No. I mean, that he actually thinks the organization is headed in the right direction.
Okay.
Because
that's what you want to hear, or that's what you think you're going to hear?
That's what I want to hear. I don't know exactly how he feels on that. I mean, I think it's not a binary yes or no answer. I think that it's shades of gray, and I know he's going to be somewhere in that continuum. I'm curious to see how optimistic he is, because I know he was very much pessimistic. This time last year, that he felt that the Royals, in swapping out their general manager with their assistant general manager, were not making a commitment to the wholesale overhaul of the organization. He may feel differently now. Now that we actually have a year and change of JJ Piccolo, making decisions, making moves. But I'm very curious to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. All right. So let's find it out. Let's welcome in Joe Sheehan here to the Kaufman Corner podcast. Baseball, big brain, right? Like is that a good enough
Oh
announcement for
God.
you, Joe?
I'm sitting here thinking, listening to you talk on the intro, is why are you speaking so slowly? Because I listen to you guys at 1.5x, and I'm just sitting like, why is he taking so long to get through it? But no, I'm really glad to be on here, guys. Excited to rep the legends. And Rany, not for nothing, even before we were friends, I came by it honestly. I was too young for 76, 77, 78. I vaguely remember 78. So really, my first broken heart as a baseball fan was the 1980 ALCS. Brett off Gossage, Ferraro sending Randolph home. So it's not like I hate the Royals just generically. I hate the Royals because they broke my heart when I was 9 years old. So
I respect that. I respect the long memories. I'm sitting here in my Chiefs jersey, and I'm still enjoying last night's defeat of the Bills in Buffalo, because that game being on the road was vengeance for the Joe Montana game, which was the closest the closest that the Chiefs got to the Super Bowl in my lifetime prior to Patrick Mahomes. So I respect the hatred. I respect the long memory. I do not respect the Yankees cap on your head, but that's okay.
By the way, I do love this shot. How do we get Taylor to buy the Royals? Wouldn't that be the bane of Joe's existence if Taylor Swift? We brought that.
Not to get us off track, but why does it? We were talking about this on Slack today. Why are people so mad about this? What is it about this Taylor Swift thing that has people so angry? It's a attractive, successful woman dating a player on your team, and football fans are like really mad about this. And like, what did Taylor Swift ever do to football fans?
I think, my theory is that one, it's a jealous society, right? In America today, people hate success. And here you've got a successful football team like the Chiefs. Chiefs were everyone's favorite in 2018 when they were new and Patrick Mahomes was new. They've now taken on the role of the bad guy of the New England Patriots. And so that comes with it. Then you've got, like you said, an attractive, successful woman. There's probably some misogyny that goes into the frustration of watching this, person who's immensely successful. And then she's having a good time, and nobody should have a good time, So, like, what the hell? I think that's what it is. And can you imagine if she were, dancing around to Royals championships? That would heads would.
No. Nobody can imagine that, Soren.
Yeah. Is that because
I want to know, can baseball get some of this smoke? Like, can we get Olivia Rodrigo to date Gunnar Henderson? Like, can we get baseball in on this? That to me, I think, is the way to go. Get Phoebe Bridgers to date a baseball player.
That's a good question.
I think the difficulty would be getting said superstar to commit to going to a baseball game night after night after night. Like, football is definitely, very, very, very celebrity friendly. You show up on a Sunday and you can disappear for the other 6 days of the week. So
yeah. There is, like, Cam says, they put her on the screen like every 5 seconds. I don't know. They have always done that with famous people. It's just she's there all the time, right?
How many shots of Callista Flockhart did we get from Fox during the playoffs during the peak of Ally McBeal? Kids, ask your parents.
Yes, yeah.
I just want to say, speaking as the original Swiftie of the group here, the guy who owns the original Taylor Swift CD from 2000.
You have 4 daughters.
No, my oldest was 3 when that album came out.
Okay.
So, no, that's all me. So just speaking as the original Swiftie, the idea that the most successful artist in the world is dating not even our best player, but he's dating the second best player on the Kansas City Chiefs. It was like it seemed impossible that the Chiefs could annoy the rest of the NFL anymore. And then they did, and it's glorious, and I love every minute of it personally.
Yeah,
that's Isaiah Pacheco erasure, but we'll skip over that.
All right, so let's get your thoughts. What do you think? The Royals obviously had a very disappointing season last year that very quickly they started to call an evaluation year. They didn't say that in spring training, but they did say it all about 4, 5, 6 weeks into the season. It became an evaluation year. They evaluated and went, oh, we need more players. And they went out and they added Seth Lugo. They added Michael Wacha. They added Will Smith, Hunter Renfroe. bullpen pieces. They've put a lot into this ball club. Nothing signed beyond 3 years with Seth Lugo's deal. What do you think of what they did in the offseason from a player perspective?
I think they're better than they were on an individual basis. I like the Lugo contract a lot. I think they got probably a number 3 starter for number 4 starter money there. I'm a big believer that Lugo could stay in a rotation for the next couple of seasons. I've compared him to Rick Reed, who was a similar reliever to the starter conversion for the Mets in the 1990s and went on to eventually play for the Royals. And it was pretty good number. He's actually better than that, better than number 3. He was actually number 1, number 2 at his peak. So I like the Lugo signing individually. The rest of them I can take or leave. I really don't care for the Hunter Renfroe signing at all. I think Hunter Renfroe is probably closer to done than anything else. And he gets in the way of a number of younger outfielders with upside. As I wrote about the Royals extensively in the newsletter in December, and I pointed out that they let Eduardo Velasquez go to put Renfroe on the roster, and Velasquez was better last. Excuse me,
Oliveros,
I should say.
You were combining Nelson Velasquez, I think, and Edward Oliveros.
Right. They let Edward Oliveros go to Pittsburgh, and I think Oliveros is right now the better player compared to Renfroe. And they're paying $4 million extra for Renfroe. I really hated that sequence. But yeah, they're better. Smith and Stratton are just guys. I mean, they were part of the outside the circle of trust for the Rangers in October when Bochy kind of narrowed his bullpen down to 3 guys. They weren't part of the 3 guys. Are they better than some of the players the Royals were pulling out of the bullpen last year? Sure. But we're talking, I believe at the time I used Pacoda. And according to Pacoda, the 4 pitchers, Waka, Lugo, Stratton, and Smith, were expected to combine for about 4 WARP. And I used BP only because Pacoda was out and nothing else was at the time. You look at Dan Szymborski's zips over at Fangraphs, and he has the Royals with exactly 1 player expected to produce more than 2 WAR. So are they better? Yes, but they're not good. They were 56 and 106 last year. Third order record, they were 67 and 95. And you can kind of do a bunch of little math and say, can we red paper clip them up to 80 wins? Yeah. If I make every positive assumption I can make about the Royals, I can get them to 80 wins.
Okay.
Ooh. And mind you, like I said, that's giving them credit for Reagan's coming back and Vinny Pasquantino being good, and giving them basically credit for everything. I think you can get them to 80 wins. And like I said, last year I thought they would be better than they were. So maybe this is a little bit of I got burnt last year, but right now, and I'm still 6 weeks from doing my own projections, but I think they're 74 and 88 teams, somewhere in there.
Well, let's start right there. Like you thought they would be better than they were last year. Why were they worse than what you had originally thought? Let's start and say, okay, what went wrong last year, and then see how this might apply to helping fix what went wrong.
I expected more development of MJ Melendez. I thought he would catch more. They'd given up on him as a catcher. He was a terrible outfielder, and he didn't hit. Other than that, he had a fine year. I was definitely expecting more out of the pitching staff. Not that I expected a lot, but I thought it'd be better than it turned out being. And some of that was, they traded some guys in season. It was not a good defensive team. That's a couple of wins there. I'd have to go back to Soren and look at, what I was thinking about them last year.
Right.
But there was no part of the team that was better than I thought it would be. Because I was high man on Witt. Rany and I went back and forth about this, coming up on 18 months now, whether Witt should stay at shortstop and could he be a shortstop. I mean, I actually think that turned out to be one of the best calls out there, but just nothing else really worked. I think you're talking about being what was the term? Evaluative year?
Yeah.
I think that's something you could say after the fact. I don't think anybody thought a year ago today it was going to be an evaluation year.
Yeah. I think we're both in agreement on that. I hear what you're saying. To me, I guess what I would counter is that, and I get that, what they've brought in are just average ball players, but that is an improvement. And the other thing is the team's starting to fit together, right? Like a real team. I'm not saying it's going to be a championship club, but the catcher playing outfielder is a problem, right? And there was a lot of that last year. Everybody out of position. Edward Oliveros can hit a little, but he can't field at all, right? And that's one of the things that, at least with Hunter, the addition of Hunter Renfroe, I had somebody reach out, long time guy in the game. Reached out to me when Renfroe came in, said he loves the signing, thinks it's underrated, said he's a better defender than people give him credit for. He'll solidify that. if you're going to play Rays baseball, you have to defend. And they were an awful defensive team. And this at least starts, sending them down the road of being able to, be a team that might actually get somebody out.
But I think Renfroe's defense is one of our central disagreements here, because I see a 31-year-old who lost a very big step last year, and is probably not getting that step back. You don't see a whole lot of 31-year-olds get their speed back, get their range back. Renfroe's a guy who has a really big arm in right field, but even at his best, that was the center of his defensive skill. I don't think he actually helps the defense. And you mentioned Olivares. Olivares isn't a very good defender either, but I know Olivares is going to hit. Renfroe might be a guy who hurts you both offensively and defensively. Like, I think we're projecting Renfroe's peak defensive skill onto the 31-year-old version of him, and I don't think that guy's there anymore.
I know. I mean, Renfroe to me has always been the flying ointment of this offseason plan. I wouldn't put it at like Jordan Lyles levels of anxiety for me. Like, there is a path for him to help this team, but there's a very, very strong possibility he's done. And we may waste half a season before we find that out for sure.
Can we back up even just to the type of player? The Royals have had a below average, forgive me, I don't have a piece in front of me, but I did the math in December, and they've had a below average OBP in all but like 22 years out of the last 25. And the two hitters that they signed, Hampson and Renfroe, had OBPs of 300 and 305 last year. They have the same blind spot they've had for years. You have to make left turns at first base. And the two guys they went out and got don't make left turns at first base. To me, that to me is like a type A error. That's why don't I believe in this management team? It's because they're not improving the team on base percentage. They went out and got a guy who in his best year is going to have a 300 OBP. They went out and got in Hampson, who I think is career high as a 300 OBP, 305.
So Hampson, I will defend them. Hampson actually had a career high, I think 349 OBP last year.
Yeah,
after leaving Colorado, it was a small sample size. Right. They did, and they did comment on the fact that him getting on base was a factor in signing. Like, JJ Picollo has made, and he's not the first Royals, general manager to make positive comments about the importance of on-base percentage. But for so long, actions have not met words. When they signed Hampson, at least you could point to what he did last season and say, okay, they're not ignoring this. But that was a central pillar of my skepticism of the Hunter Renfroe signing. I agree. It's like, you talk about how you didn't get on base enough last year, how on-base percentage is important, and the one everyday player, because Hampson's supposed to be a bench guy, the one everyday player you bring in to augment this roster, I think has a career high 305 OBP, and is in his 30s. Like, it just, at some point, the actions have to match the words. And that's the one thing that, I think they did a great job with the pitching side in bringing in average talent, but offensively, that's a real problem.
Can I read you a sequence of numbers?
Yeah.
Go for it.
302, 287, 289, 287, 349. What was that sequence of numbers?
Yeah. Which one don't look like the rest of them? I think it's the point.
Garrett Hampson had a 379 BABIP last year after a career of, and I'm just going to do kind of mental quick math here, about 312 coming into last season. Garrett Hampson isn't your OBP guy. Besides, if you want to tell me you bring him in as the fourth guy on the bench, and remember when benches had more than four guys, like that I almost buy, except the Royals already have a bunch of guys who play multiple positions and run. I mean, who does he bump from the bench? It's about Taylor, Dairon Blanco. God, I did the list in the article. You have like five guys who fit this thing. Like, so I don't think Hampson's an OBP guy, and I think you already had 4 or 5 guys just like him. Again, I mean, you and I talked out there. We were talking out there about you guys did the recent draft and crafting a team and building a roster. Rany, as a strike guy, you this is not how you build a roster.
Offense on the offensive side, I agree that Hampson and Renfroe do not fit the roster the way Soren and I talked about. We wanted a left-handed hitting outfielder who gets on base. Mm-hmm. They brought in a right-handed hitting outfielder who's got some pop and a good arm, but his defense is declining and low OBP. It does not fit their needs. I totally
Chuck Peterson would have been a better fit.
But so who?
Chuck Peterson.
I mean, like my point. Like the thing I would ask is, if not him, then who? And I think that's the part is like, well, go sign this guy. And Rany and I even will butt heads on this from time to time. And like, well, so-and-so signed so-and-so for 2 years and $16 million. You could have got him. Well, no, because probably for the Royals, it was going to take 3 years and $27 million. Like I have this rule of thumb. It's generally an extra year and an extra million per, just to get anybody to listen to you when you're down at the bottom. If you can start,
you make Kansas City sound like, I don't know, Cleveland or something. You make Kansas City sound like an incredibly unattractive place, and it's not. I mean, there was a time in the 80s when Kansas City actually had an advantage. There was a perception that players would rather go to Kansas City or a place like that because it kept them. They got the money, and it kept them out of the cauldrons of New York and Los Angeles and Chicago and Philadelphia and what have you. So I think positioning Kansas City as this 50% tax is, I think, a little ridiculous.
I don't. I think it's accurate. Having talked to the people who go out and try to make the signings, I think it's accurate. And I think you're quoting the 1980s as your how things should be operated today. On one side, you're talking modern analytics and stats. On the other side, you're like, oh no, free agency works like the 1980s. Everybody can't wait to get to Kansas City.
I'm not saying everybody can't wait to get there. I'm saying you're painting Kansas City, where, by the way, my friend, you live and work, as like some hellhole. People have to be given a 50% bonus to get there.
I'm not painting the city in any way. I'm painting the Royals as an organization that people are not lining up to play for right now.
Okay, and that tax, I believe. I just don't think it's what you're getting. And it's not even about the Royals themselves. It's just the coverage of Ohtani to a certain extent, but Yamamoto in particular, where I think we see the tradition of winning, helping the Dodgers now. We're seeing who's the NPB player who just signed a contract with the Rays, signed a minor league deal. Sawamura, do I have that right?
I think now Yuki Sawamura, I believe, got a minor.
He went to Kansas City because, he went to Tampa Bay because they have a tradition of winning. I don't think it's he wanted to really play in Tampa. It's, if I go here, I have a chance to win. That to me is something the organization controls. Well, win, and people will want to come play there.
Right, but to win, you need good players, right? And to get attract, and if you're struggling in the draft and in Latin America, which we'll talk about some of the changes they've made in the front office to try to improve that here in a second. But then the only way is to go into free agency. And I'm going to tell you, I had conversations when Gilmesh signed 5 for $55 in Kansas City. The next best offer was 4 for $40. The Blue Jays and Cubs were offering 4 for $40, and the Royals had to go to 5 to $55 to get him. That's where I use that number as it comes back from. I know for a fact that those were the offers that were out there for Mesh, and that's what it took to get him back then. And they're back, unfortunately, in that situation. There is no tradition of winning here. So if you're going to improve your club, listen, we can all agree this is finger in the dike stuff, right? Like you're not. This is not building a foundation. This is to try to stop the bleeding and take some pressure off your young guys so that MJ Melendez, we don't sit and view and say, well, he's got to come in and save the day. There are actually some guys who can get somebody out in the rotation. Hopefully that the sum of the parts will be better. But this is not when they raise a World Series, Michael Wacha is the guy who gets, throws a complete game in Game 6 to solve the World Series. Can we agree with that?
I would separate the pitching deals from the hitting deals for that reason. So I can look at Lugo, Wacha, even Smith and Stratton. They're not paying him a lot of money. And again, you need 1,400 innings. And we know that the bottom of the Royal staff last year was pretty bad. So I can look at the pitching. I don't think they're going to have that big an impact. But I don't, individually and even collectively, I'm fine with them. Renfroe and Hampson, I think you go backwards. I think they're actually going to end up taking playing time and roster spots, in the case of Olivares, from players who are more likely to help the Royals win. I think they actually don't make the Royals win. Well, Olivares, again, for one. Isbell. You got Isbell, Waters, Melendez, Taylor, Lofton, Blanco,
Nelson
Velasquez is actually on the roster. It's similar to me the Candelario deal with the Reds, where if he's just bumping every day he's in the lineup, somebody who should be playing isn't. So again, in both cases, I just don't think they push the team closer to winning. They're not the types of players they need. Combine. What do you expect? I mean, Hunter Renfroe has never been better than a 3-win player in his career. Literally never. He just had one of the worst years of his career. Punt 2020. 2020 doesn't count. He's had one of the worst years of his career. And what is he going to bounce back to? A 1.5-win player? A 2-win player? I mean, yay.
Listen, MJ Melendez, I got a lot of the analytic community is prospect hounds. And I'll go back to the days like when Rany and I went round and round about the trading of Will Myers, right? And how do you give up a young guy? And it ended up working out, for the Royals. Obviously, Wade Davis being the best part of it. James Shields was very good as well. But MJ Melendez, I find a lot of the times that a guy's coming up, he's a prospect, and so we love the prospect, and we're like, how do you give up on this guy? You got to give him playing time. If you're going to quote to me the numbers of Hunter Renfroe and the numbers of Hampson, quote the numbers of MJ Melendez. There's one decent year. One, he won a home run title in Double-A. The rest of his time is nothing special. And why the Royals should keep running out a guy who has a frying pan on his hand in the outfield and can't do anything right behind the plate with this idea that what do you think he's going to be? Because I heard the same thing about Adalberto Mondesi. Like, oh, we got to run Mondesi out there. He's not good. Like, at what point do you go, MJ Melendez is not good. We have to go get somebody who we know can at least play the position and give us a professional at-bat, a professional day at the ballpark.
Professional at-bat when he strikes out 32% of the time. I don't think Renfroe is a better player than Melendez. I don't think Renfroe's a better player than Melendez right now. And I agree that is a debatable point. But I don't want to drag Melendez's prospect status into this because that was when he was a catcher. And, he looked like a catcher. Got to the major leagues. They gave up on him as a catcher. He's a bad outfielder. I agree that path isn't very good. MJ Melendez might not have a whole lot of value. But MJ Melendez plus $6 million, I'd rather have that combination than Renfroe. If for no other reason, then if I give him 1,100 innings in the outfield and 600 at-bats, maybe he does something with that. Hunter Renfroe, if you give him 1,100 innings and 600 at-bats, it's just going to leave next year. Like, you haven't gotten anywhere. Maybe he's giving you 2 wins, so now you're 78 and 84 instead of 76 and 86. MJ Melendez at least has the potential to bring back that trade value. He can build up his trade value. If he gets 320 at-bats as a platoon guy and looks bad in the outfield because he's only playing it twice a week, you've actually ruined that as an asset as well.
Oh, I think they ruined the asset. What they should have done was traded him when they gave Salvador Perez a contract. And he never should have seen the big leagues before he was sent to some other team because they've completely ruined his trade value altogether.
Right, but we can't do that anymore. I'm just spinning it forward. Say, from this point forward, what do you do to maximize the value of the player? And it's not playing him 3 times a week.
I mean, I think it's to send him. What do you think he's going to be? When do you give up on a guy? Do you just play him endlessly?
No, I would have given him this. I would give him this year. At which point you're going to make the decision because he's still, he's only a 1+ player at this point.
I don't have any. Yeah, he's still a year away from our
24, 25, and a 1+ player. I think that's this time. By the way, this is the longest Rany's gone without talking in the entire history of our relationship.
Yeah, go, Rany.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I don't want to get too bogged down in the weeds about Renfroe. I think we kind of all agree on some level about Renfroe. Yes. I think it's more argument about Melendez. But at this point, the Royals have sort of, I think when they traded Olivares, they sort of went in with Melendez as the guy they still believe may have a shot to be something. I at this point, given his youth, given the club control, I think there are worse decisions than just giving him one more shot. But I think the bigger issue is you talk about how, you're saying the Royals, you're predicting them at 74 to 88, which happens to be exactly the number I have for them, which would be the second year in a row that we're in essentially agreement.
This is weird. This is so weird.
I know. And you're like, if everything goes right, they could get to maybe 80. And I actually, pretty much agree with you that best case scenario for this team is to be around 500. The argument I'm curious to hear what you think of in terms of why this still makes sense for the Royals to do anyway, is simply that if they are an 80 and an 82 team, 82 and 80 team, a 500 team on paper in this division, they will be no worse than 3 games out going into September. They can obviously make trades at the deadline if they're in it. The argument, I think, for mediocrity is that there has rarely, if ever, been a division in the history of the sport in which mediocrity might get you first place than the American League Central in the year 2024. What is your position on that?
But that's where you kind of lost me because, again, I'm making every positive inference I can make. And sorry, I'm looking for the piece now. And what I found is that you're reducing their chances to, can the bad division be even worse this coming year? The AL Central is actually not as bad in terms of winning it as you're positioning it as. And again, I'm vamping a little bit. I can go find the piece. But you look at the AL Central in recent years, and it's generally won with 87, 88 wins. The second place team is often 500 or worse. So let's start from this. The Royals have no chance at a wild card. There are 6 roughly 90-win talent teams in the American League. The Orioles, Rays, Yankees, Jays, Astros, Rangers, Mariners. It's 7 actually. So you're reducing it to can the AL Central next year be won with like 84 or 85 wins? If that's all you're doing, you're trying to hope that this is the year that there aren't 2 decent teams in the AL Central. Hope isn't a plan. Hope just isn't a plan for me. You say if everything goes right, we can get to, we can be 500-ish at the trade deadline. Okay. What does the 26th or so ranked farm system in the league going to do at the trade deadline? I'm not trying to be funny. It's a bad farm system. They squeaked the catcher from last year into BP's top 100. I think of the other top 100s, they actually have no prospects. I don't think this is a plan, man. I think you're putting way too much weight in the AL West. God, what is with the AL West? The AL Central being really bad. And I look at the AL Central, like the Twins. Look, nobody's done anything this winter. The Royals have acquired more major league talent than the other 4 teams combined, I think. But the Twins are still going to hit. They got some decent pitching. They're well run. The Guardians have a bunch of pitching. They have some hitters coming through. Like right now, I think both of those teams are 8 wins better than the Royals. And that's, again, being reasonably generous to the Royals. This idea that, it's a bad division, so we don't have to actually bring in major league players or run a major league payroll is silly.
By the way, we're proudly brought to you by our friends at GAN Asphalt and Concrete, nationally recognized full-service paving and pavement maintenance contractor. Parking lot problems, they've been solving them since 1994. Don't risk accidents and liability in your parking lot. Get your parking lot restriped today. Brightly striped lots cut down on accidents and keep your parking lot as safe as possible, allowing you to focus on your business. We're talking with Joe Sheehan from the Joe Sheehan Baseball Newsletter. When do you see them contending, Joe? If it's not this year, if they can't contend in this division, when do you see the Royals? How long do you think whatever the plan is going to take?
The pithy answer is a year after they change GMs, or whatever.
So you're not a fan of JJ Piccolo.
I'm not, and this goes back to, let's say, a year and a half ago. I sat in Kaufman with Rany saying if they're going to dump, they got to dump everybody, and they held on to JJ. Now I think JJ's had a better second year than he did his first. He's off to a good start this offseason, but I'm just not a fan. But when you have a badly rated farm system and you don't have a core at the major league level, and we know you're not going to buy 5-win players, this is the other issue I had with the Renfroe and really all the signings combined. If you look at the 6 guys they signed, I believe they're paying out $47 million this year. That's a superstar. Even with the Soren tax, that's a superstar. And do I think they'd be better with the 6 guys they got or Cody Bellinger? I'm not the biggest Cody Bellinger fan. I think they'd be better with Bellinger. Do I think they'd be better with the 6 guys they got or Chapman plus Montgomery? They'd be better with Chapman and plus Montgomery. So there's a lack of will to go out and buy those types of potentially high, 5 and 6 win players. So yeah, I think you're betting a lot on the division. And soon enough here, like the Tigers are probably going to get good before the Royals do. So that's another roadblock in the way. The White Sox are going to be bad for a while, as we know, until they're sold probably. So, realistically, what did we see last year? 2 100-loss teams from 2021 in the World Series, from 2022 maybe. It's hard to be that far from the playoffs in modern baseball. 40% of the league gets into the playoffs. So I can't sit here and tell you it'll be 8 years before the Royals make the playoffs again, because any team in baseball is probably no more than 2 wins and 2 years and a little bit of luck. But were I the Royals this winter, I would have focused more on building a 90-win team in 25, 26, 27 than trying to add marginal wins for 2024.
Well, I guess the argument to that is what should they have done in order to get, build that 90-win team 2, 3, 4 years from now? Because I think the argument the Royals will make is the way to do that is to improve on player development, improve in the draft.
Yes.
They brought in a new scouting director in Brian Bridges. They've hired multiple guys from like Driveline and Tread to help develop pitchers. That's something we weren't seeing last year. That's something we would never see with Dayton Moore. And that is the argument that JJ Piccolo is doing things differently, and that he is making whatever you think of the short-term Band-Aid decisions to sign all these free agents, that he is doing as much as could be expected to build a long-term foundation for success in just finding amateur talent that they've done a piss poor job of for the last decade.
Well, I said a couple minutes ago, JJP is off to a better start in his second year than he was in his first year. Start from like September of 2022 through August of 2023. He's off to a better start in his second year entirely because of that. The things he's doing behind the scenes are improving. They're bringing in voices from outside the organization, which wasn't the Royals' way for a zillion years. I love the fact that he's doing that. And like I said, were it me, I would have let him go. And I think having given him the 2023 draft, you're kind of locked in for a couple. You've given him 2023 draft. You've given him a couple of international signing periods. You've kind of made it his team. When the Red Sox fired Chaim Bloom, the argument I made that was a bad move was that you've got to give him time to turn the ship around. And he basically only given the fact that his first year was the pandemic year, he really was only given 2 years. And that's to upgrade all of your infrastructure, to hire all the people you want to hire, to change the processes internally. So if I'm going to say that, Chaim Bloom was fired too soon, I have to then say, if you're going to have kept JJ Piccolo, you have to go ahead and
you had it right the first time.
Rob Piccolo, the instrument, and JJP. We got to get them to all agree on a pronunciation here.
Just call him JJ.
JJP. There we go. But I think having done that, you probably have to say, okay, you've got to give him 4 years now. He's started the process of turning the Royals around. You've committed to that. So as much as I wish they just cleaned house completely, and as much as I don't like the first year he had in the job, at this point, I think you've got to commit to him for the next few years and see if the changes he's making in player dev, in player acquisition, in international department are going to take hold. So at this point, but to get back to like your original question from 73 minutes ago that I filibustered, I don't think there's anything they could have done this year. I think they could have continued. They should have continued to fix the internal processes and just not worried about the 2024 team's record.
That's fair. Bobby Witt Jr. is kind of a test case, right? So if they can't sign their own guy to a long-term contract, like, would you buy into my theory that, you can talk about Jordan Zimmerman. Jordan Zimmerman is not going to come play for a team that lost 100-plus games last year. It's like not happening. If you can't even get the guy in your organization right now that came up with you, if for some reason they don't get him extended, will you buy into my theory that there is a massive tax that comes with trying to get anybody that you're talking about that would make a substantial difference? It would cost an exorbitant amount of money beyond what anybody else would pay to get them here.
I think they can get Jordan Zimmerman for the minimum. I'm just not sure even he's better than Jordan Lyles.
I think he's talking about Jordan Montgomery.
Right.
Oh, I thought he meant Jordan Lyles.
Too many Jordans.
Yeah,
we should banish the name.
There is a franchise legitimacy question here. Because not only is he the best player they've produced in a very long time, he's the best player they're going to produce for quite a while. The Royals are unlikely to have a better player than Bobby Witt Jr. in the next at least 3 years. I mean, their next player better than Bobby Witt Jr. is probably an amateur today. So if you can't retain him, maybe, and I know you guys have debated this ad infinitum, do you have to trade him now while it's 4 years of a superstar player and try to make the Herschel Walker trade, try to make the Mark Teixeira trade? I think you want to try to do whatever you can. Now, his agent isn't Ozzie Albies' agent, so it's going to be difficult. But I think given the future payrolls aren't going to be that high, I think you can overpay, pay the Soren tax. What would be a reasonable contract for Bobby Witt Jr.? Is it 10 and 300? That only takes him to what, 32, 33? Does it have to be the Tatis deal? Does the Tatis deal make sense? But that's what we're talking about here. If you want him to play for you guys forever, you got to pull out the Willie Wilson, George Brett lifetime deals. Was Quisenberry you also got one? You got to make this a lifetime contract. And I'm not sure. The one thing I would say is if you're Bobby Witt, and let's assume we're talking, is Witt represented by Boris?
No.
Okay. Let's assume whoever his agent is well aware of the global trends in Major League Baseball. If he's being signed, if you're going to make this contract, you're talking about signing him for like an entire transition into a new local media model. Like Bobby Witt made his Major League debut in the RSN model, and God only knows when his career is going to end in 2012, 2037. in whatever model is then. So I think the argument for Witt is we don't know what the future looks like. There might be a strike or a lockout, and we come out of this with a payroll cap, and all of a sudden you can't get the contract that Ohtani got. You can't get the Harper or the Betts deal because that just doesn't exist in Major League Baseball anymore. So maybe you lock in $350 million now because your particular future coming up in, when you hit free agency in 2028 is a lot different than all of these guys' future. I think that I can make, it's a cold argument. Don't get me wrong. This isn't a family, hey, buddy, we're going to be family forever argument. This is what the economic situation looks like. So I wonder if maybe that's an angle in to make this contract happen. But you've missed your window probably to get him cheap. To have him sign the Evan White, Jonathan Singleton, who just signed one of these? Jackson Churio. Jackson Churio was what, 10 and 80 something? You're not getting that out of Bobby Witt now. It's got to start with a 3.
Yeah, I will question what's the small market team that's had success with one of these deals. I mean, I pointed out the Reds' win percentage before signing Joey Votto, it was much better than it was after signing Joey Votto. But I went through a whole list of guys that,
Yeah, I listened to that. What it basically was teams that were really bad at player development. The contracts themselves were actually fine. If you look at the players' production for
case in point, this team.
When did the Royals ever spend a bunch of money on a player?
Oh, you said teams that were bad with player development, which is this team, which is
right.
Almost like, and it's the exact same situation we're sitting in here. The team looked at it and said, this is the only guy we've developed, and it's the only guy that's coming, so we can't let him go. And in reality, it handcuffed the team. And
I disagree. I completely disagree with the presence. Every time we say a contract handcuffed a team, that's a team handcuffing itself and using the contract as an excuse.
I think a bad if Bobby Witt Jr. would have a back injury the way Mike Sweeney did, and all of a sudden the power's gone, and this organization has $35 million wrapped up in that player, it's going to hurt a hell of a lot more than it is the Yankees just brushing
right.
it off.
Yeah, but the Yankees just generate. I mean, we're not going to get into a payroll cap revenue sharing.
So let's talk about the Rays. Who's the guy that the Rays have put a massive contract on?
I don't really think that's relevant. That to me, that case is sui generis, and we don't really want to drag that into this. I don't want to compare a guy having a back injury to what Wander Franco apparently did.
I know. I'm just, but why does it? Like, you never know what can happen. And for the Rays, and we'll see what happens now that they've got that money just being shoveled out the door. But they've had nothing but success, and they've never tied themselves down in a big contract like that. They've always stayed mobile. They've always developed, and that goes without saying. Right, you have to do that.
I find myself in the uncomfortable position of wanting to be the arbiter between the two of you.
Okay,
this is new for me. Again, I think you're both making good points. I would say with Tampa Bay, obviously the Evan Longoria deal, which really kind of launched the Tampa Bay Rays era. They changed the name from the Devil Rays to the Rays. They brought up Evan Longoria a week into the 2008 season, and overnight, you cannot think of a greater blueprint really in the 21st century in baseball. A team that went from incompetent bozos to lean, mean.
They hired 2 guys from BP. They hired 2 guys who worked for me and became genius.
Yeah, but hang on. That was 25 cents on the dollar. That was Evan Longoria 2 weeks into his big.
Well, this is my point.
That was not what we're talking
about. We're both saying this. They missed
Bobby Witt Jr. now.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They missed the window. That's what I'm saying. And maybe I have to assume they tried, and Bobby Witt just was not interested in signing the 25 cents on the dollar deal. And
which
so
would
now they're paying.
My point about the tax you have to pay to get any free agent to come here if you can't get your own guy to sign.
Yes, but at the same time, that's partly the Royals. I think it's also partly Bobby Witt being a number 2 overall pick in the draft. Tons of money comes from his dad is
family who has a professional player who made a good living. He didn't need
not
the money.
It's not a coincidence that most of the guys who signed these deals very early on tend to be either international free agents or guys who were late draft picks and don't have the money to guarantee themselves generational wealth and are willing to take take away their shot at the $300 million contract for the guaranteed $100 million. So that's
I don't think it's a Royals thing. I think it's a Bobby Witt thing. I don't think Bobby Witt was necessarily going to be inclined to sign this deal with any team because of, as we're saying, he didn't need the money the way a lot of other players might.
Right. So that's the one point on the one side. I want to make that about the Rays. But to what Soren is saying, you're right that in between the Longoria signing, which was 16 years ago now, and the Wander Franco signing, the Rays, their success was not predicated on getting it wasn't the Atlanta Braves model of, again, the Alex Anthopoulos mind control and somehow getting players to sign really ridiculously underpriced
Remember, John
contracts
Hart
in
was
some
first.
cases. John Hart invented the whole model in the early 1990s. Nobody knew, what the potential savings was. I think we know now, and somehow the Braves have managed to do it. But the point is, the Rays, that's not the model. The way they've sustained the winning, like you said, is they never get tied down to any player. They were willing to trade anybody at any time, and they're constantly recycling. Basically, they take the guy who's 2 years away from free agency and trade him for the guy who's 6 years away from free agency, or three of those guys. And they're willing to occasionally miss on on the players that they trade for, but sheer volume, they win more than they lose, and that has sustained them for the better part of 2 decades. But that gets to the point of what Joe suggested, which I suggested on the show a while back and got a lot of crap from our commenters on. You have to at least consider the idea of trading Bobby Witt. If not now, maybe in a year. Yeah, I don't think he's going to lose a lot of value in the next 12 months. But I think once you get from 3 years away from free agency down to 2, and certainly down to 1, the opportunity of a truly transformational trade, the Zach Greinke trade, like the Royals they can point to a trade that changed the trajectory of the franchise, trading a superstar for prospects, right? So if the farm system continues to be where it is now, one of the 3 or 4 worst in the game, a year from now, and you're really still starting from ground zero, you really have to start thinking about trading the one superstar that your organization has.
And can I?
There's somebody in comment. I just want to point out D-Bay in the comments. They got the team-friendly deal with Salvi and they won the series. You talk about your team-friendly. That was like 5 years, 96-65 with tax plus tax or something. I mean, that was a ridiculous contract. Didn't they actually go back and elect to renegotiate that because it was so bad? Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the Royals do have one of these deals in their history.
Well, can we come back on Bobby Witt Jr.? I mean, like you rattled off those on-base percentages. I mean, the big league on-base percentages are 294 and 319.
In that order.
So what is Bobby Witt Jr.? Tell me what he is. What his, after his career is over, what are we looking at? What is the player?
This year is going to tell a lot. He's 22 last year, right?
23.
He turned 23 midseason. He turns 24 in June.
So yeah, it's on the fence. Rany, do you remember there used to be an age 23 thing? Guys taking the big leap at age 23. It might have been a Bill James thing. It might have been a Clay Davenport thing. I forget which. But there was something like I think that we may get a sense this year. Does Witt take that next step forward and become 300, 340, 560 with 40 for 45 steals? And does he hold the defensive gains? Like we disagreed on his defensive potential last year, Rany and I. He had a good year, but it was very much a good in the first half, not so good in the second half. Like we're going to find out by the end of this year if he's shortstop or third base. I still think he's a shortstop, but I'm weirdly a little less confident of that than I was a year ago. But we're going to know by the end of this year whether Bobby Witt Jr. is.
Wait a minute. How are you less confident in him being a shortstop now after the improvements he made last year?
If you look at the breakdown, he actually was really good in the first half and not in the second. Okay. Like he fell off considerably in the second half. So kind of reinstituted some of those doubts about whether he's like, I would leave him there because I'm fine with playing a -5 shortstop if I can get the offense that he brings. But I understand that not everybody believes that. And with changes to where you can position guys, there's reasons to go the other way. But I think we talked about this with Melendez. Like I understand Melendez was bad defensively, but once you move him out behind the plate, you erase so much of his potential value that you just don't do that. You just live with a bad defense. Witt's the same way. Witt is a shortstop, is a franchise player. Witt as a third baseman is a level below that, just for the move itself. But he's your only guy. He's the only guy on the team or on the horizon who might be a 5-win player.
Vinny Pasquantino, you don't see it there.
I think he can peak at being a 5-win player, and I like Vinny. And we'll see what happens with the shoulder. He said, I thought I saw a quote earlier this winter. He's doing fine. He's looking forward to coming back. Yeah, he could be there. If he's Pete Alonso, like does that, Pete Alonso peaked, I believe, around a 5-win player, like that kind of guy. I think that's a good player. So yeah, there's your potential second guy. There's not a pitcher in the organization who can be that. Cole Reagans has been a good major league pitcher for like 75 innings. Can we chill?
You just said there's no one who can, so you're eliminating everybody. And so I just want to throw out the name that I know our listeners will sit here.
All right.
Well, Cole
All right.
Reagans was
That's
let
right.
out for a handful
That's
of
right.
starts. Are we ready? I mean, listen, I'm with you. I think I would. Here's what no one wants to hear.
I'd trade Cole.
I'd trade just about everybody.
I said that when I was on the Bobby Witt should be traded. I mean, if you want to burn the organization to the ground, like if you go that route, Cole Reagans right now, precisely because nobody knows what he is, he might be an ace. So like, could you get something for him, comparable to about 50 times more than you got for Aroldis Chapman in the first place in terms of the value?
It always sounds crazy because fans are like, how can you trade this guy? He was so, you know what? A lot of the times at that very moment we're saying that, the guy's never going to be better than he just was. You got to have to, and there's a word one of you has used a lot, transactional. You got to be more transactional. You got to be like the Rays. Chris Archer was popular and good, and they traded him at exactly the right time for Glasnow and Baz, who still hasn't pitched 15 innings in the major leagues, and who's the other one? Austin Meadows. And they flipped Austin Meadows because they decided they could get a better deal. You've got to have that in mind. Let me ask you about something here. How much trading Witt or trading Reagans and burning it to the ground? How much of that is impossible because they're trying to get $8.6 billion from the public?
I mean, that's
pretty much all of it's impossible. Yeah, it's not realistic right now.
It's not, and I think that certainly ownership was ready to greenlight money being spent because they're trying to get something through. In reality, the biggest thing that the Royals had to do was tie in with the Chiefs because I think everyone feels like the Chiefs are going to get what they want. Don't get me started on the fact that it's not a brand new stadium with a retractable roof dome that we could host many other events here in Kansas City. I hate that they're just going to renovate Arrowhead and leave it open air and not be able to add to the quantity of events that be there.
Cold weather football is a plus. They should leave it open
air. The Final Four coming to your town and bowl games, a national championship of college football playoff games being in your town. Those are, if we buy that these events bring revenue to the city, then you need buildings that can bring these events. But I do want to get your thoughts on the Royals. And you came in as a Yankee fan and saw a game at Kauffman Stadium, right? What do you think of the fact that is that ballpark? To me, there is Fenway, Wrigley, Lambeau Field. Here ended the list of destination old places to go and check out. Once the Royals and Chiefs think that they're right below that. And maybe not the Royals because they're moving.
Okay.
But some Royals fans think that Kauffman Stadium, because it was. It has the fountains and all that. Do you think Kauffman Stadium is an iconic stadium and one that should be preserved, or are you on board with them building a new downtown stadium?
I think it's a very good older stadium. I had a great time. I also saw, I think, the last good start of Brady Singer's career. But it's 51 years old now, 72. Is that right?
73. This will be the year.
A friend of Randy's gave us a wonderful breakdown of the history of the place. I went to the Hall of Fame that's in there. I loved my weekend there. But I do think as much as we replaced some of these stadiums too quickly, Atlanta, Turner Field was like 19 years old when they flipped it. The one in Texas was 25, I think. A 50-year-old stadium, and Oakland Coliseum fits this as well. That's about at the point where you can reasonably say this does need to be replaced. They put a lot of money into renovating it. And at some point, you just have to stop doing that. They put a lot of money into renovating Angel Stadium, Dodger Stadium. But these are 60-year-old physical plants, and it does start to wear. The only thing I don't like about Kauffman is that I'm partial to downtown ballparks. I'm a New Yorker, I'm a non-driver, and I just would rather the park be around other stuff in the city. That's the one big downside to me. But it's Kansas, it's Missouri. Like, people are more used to driving there. I don't think that's a downside for the people who live there. But I do think you can reasonably make a case for replacing Kauffman in a way that some of these other ballparks, it's ridiculous. Like, it's 20, 25 years old, 30 years old. They're talking about replacing New Comiskey. That's 30 years. 55 years old, 50, 55. That's at the age where you can reasonably start to see it go. So I think there's a case that the Royals could use a new ballpark. But I'm never going to be in favor of the Royals needing a new ballpark that's paid for by taxpayer money. There's been a zillion studies, and they all point in the same direction. It's never worth it. They're just boondoggles for teams. And especially now, the teams don't just want the ballpark. They want the Battery in Atlanta. They want the Ballpark Village in St. Louis. It's not just build us a ballpark. It's build us this massive structure that we're going to take all the money from, and we'll give you 0.0001% of the revenue and tax money to give it back. These are bad deals for the public. Every credible economist will tell you they're bad deals for the public. So, do I think the Royals could use a new stadium? Yes. It is my hope that they finance it mostly privately.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. All right, so let's close with this then, Joe. What should the Royals do here moving forward? Would you be burning this thing down? Are you evaluating yet another year? The team is what it is now. Where do you go from here?
John Sherman's rich. Sign Bellinger and Montgomery and Chapman while you're at it. I mean, the $40 million that they spent to get 4 wins better isn't going to help them. Go out and spend $140 million more and get guys who are actually going to help you. That's kind of
made this argument that this offseason that the first signing, if it moves the needle from 67 wins to 69 wins, does nothing. But if you package that with a second signing, okay, you're getting a little bit closer. We're now at 74. Would you actually make the argument then that if they go out and sign Bellinger, which I don't see them doing, but if they did, at what point are you saying, yeah, maybe this team can actually contend in 2024? Do they need 2 elite free agents? Are the free agents out there that you think can actually get them to be go into the season, if not the odds-on favorite, at least co-favorites to win the American League Central? Bellinger and you mentioned.
Remember
Chapman,
when I wanted them to sign Trey Turner, and you laughed at me?
Oh, I agreed with you. But you know what? In retrospect, a 56-win team, probably Trey Turner wouldn't have moved the needle that much.
It would have been a 59-win team. No, I'm half kidding. You asked me what they should do. They have moved into that zone where if you were to add 8 wins, now they actually are a lot more interesting. They're not going to do it. We know that the Royals operate. They're not going to do that. But that's the way to win. Ways to win is to go out and try to find a 5-win free agent. I've written plenty about not loving Bellinger. There's a lot of question marks about him. The defense at 2 positions, he's flexible. I mean, he's young. This is a situation where maybe you have to make a bad WAR per dollar signing to get the marginal wins that you actually need. Bellinger and Montgomery would probably make them 8 wins better. And now you're talking about, and yes, it's going to add $65 million to the payroll. Maybe not that. But you now are talking about a team that might be right there with the Guardians and Twins to contend. So if you want to just say, hey, look, let's get everybody excited. We spent $40 million on 4 wins, and maybe this happens, and maybe this happens, and maybe this happens, and we can contend, sure. But if you want to convince me that you're for real, go out and sign Bellinger. Go out and make ridiculous offers. Offer Cody Bellinger 2 years and $85 million because you don't want to have anything on the payroll after 2025. But maybe he makes you 5 wins better next year. Do the same thing with Montgomery. Give Montgomery 3 and 100. All it's costing you is cash. And this gets back to the arguments that I know a lot of people don't like. But you know what? Not only do the teams make a bunch of money for 1 more year anyway with local TV, plenty of money with national TV, plenty of money with MLB.TV, the share of that everybody gets. The owner is rich. If you can afford to buy the Kansas City Royals, you can afford to overpay for Cody Bellinger and Jeff Montgomery. At least it's a Royals podcast. Wow. Jordan Montgomery for a year or 2. And if you can't sell the team, I'm really tired of guys who are rich enough to buy baseball teams, then penny pitching in every other area. Go out and sign Bellinger and Montgomery. And you know what? Honestly, you're going to get some of that money back. What did they bring in last year? The Royals, almost more than any team in baseball. I know we're up against it, guys, time-wise. More than almost any other team in baseball. Their attendance and therefore ballpark revenue rises and falls with the success of the team. You look at the 2010 through 2022, and it's they suck. They won. They suck. If you go out and you put a better team on the field, they're going to get that money back directly at the ballpark. If you sign Bellinger and Montgomery and you win 84 games, that's going to bring 500,000 more people out to the ballpark. That's going to make $30 to $50 million in direct revenue.
I think it's fair. I mean, I think it's at some point you do have to make that signing. I think they want more of the foundation in place, and I don't even know that they would. I mean, I think the Rays. Everybody thinks that, well, look at what the Rays have done. We can do it that way, and I think that's a scary proposition, right? I think it's scary.
I think what you want to do is you want to be the Rays with money. Right, that's what the Red Sox said they wanted to
That's
be.
the Dodgers.
Right, the Dodgers are really the
It was
Rays
the Tigers
with
for a
tons
long
of
time.
money. Sorry,
It was the Tigers for quite a while.
Exactly. Like, the Rays model. The fact that it works for the Rays doesn't mean that like it isn't easier to do it if you actually throw money into the equation. So, yeah, I mean, none of us think that'll happen, but man, I'll tell you this much: I'll be more likely to fly down to Kansas City and watch games if they sign Clay Bellinger and the Clay Bellinger Cody. I think it's my turn to make the mistake, confusing the.
I know you're not drinking. I'm the guy drinking getting the name drink.
If they sign Bellinger and Montgomery, it's gonna put butts in the seats.
I want to make one more point before we get out of here. There's a gentleman in the chat who's accused me of talking out of both sides of my mouth. I just want to mention when I talk about Renfroe blocking players, there are two things I've said. I said Renfroe is blocking players, and I've said that the Royals don't have talent beyond Bobby Witt. They're two different things. Right now, the Royals have a whole bunch of potential 2 to 4 win players who could play the outfield. Again, so we talked about one of them being with the Pirates now. That's the guys Renfroe's taking away playing time from. What the Royals don't have are stars in the farm system. They don't have guys who are going to potentially be 4 and 5 win players. I understand the confusion. It's just two different conversations. What they have now that Renfroe is blocking and what they have developmentally that it could become core players. And they just don't have that right now. We talk about the Rays. What the Rays do is they generate not just 1 and 2 and 3 win players. They generate stars. They've been incredibly successful trading. That's the thing. Is Reagan's going to be the first, or is going to be just the accidental lightning strike? Or does JJP have a skill at identifying these players who they can then turn into parts of the core? That's part of the thing we don't know yet. If you can acquire a Cole Reagans, let's assume Cole Reagans is what he was last year. If you acquire one of those every 2 years, you are well on your way to being the Rays.
With free consultations, no commissions, in-house crews, and every project coming with a written warranty, GAN Asphalt and Concrete can keep your parking lot safer, allow you to avoid unnecessary delays, costly expenses. Focus on your business. You can find them online at ganasphalt.com. That's ganasphalt.com. One contractor, all things parking lot. Rany, anything you want to close with before we go?
Now I'm going to be disappointed when the Royals don't sign Bellinger and Montgomery. So thanks for that, Joe.
Yeah, there it is.
I just want to get out of the whole big market, the markets and its owners. It's owners. It's not markets. It's owners. It's not markets. It's owners. Let's just start talking more about these are incredibly rich guys who could pay these players and tip money from their ashtray.
Well, ultimately, I think that you don't want an organization to limit its options unnecessarily, and to say we can't. Nothing bothers me more than I hear an organization say we can't do this. You can. You always have a choice, right? And I think the Royals have made poor choices. That's why they are where they are today. They've made poor choices in the past. I think they've made better choices in the last 10 months. From the date after Jordan Lyles was signed till today, I think they've made better choices. They still have an opportunity. This free agent market has been kind of strangely a little bit frozen. And, there are rumors that the Royals are still in on at least one free agent, one more additional free agent. So I'm not ruling out anything, and I don't want the Royals to rule out anything. If the opportunity is there, the Scott Boris's quote unquote pillow contract. If someone like Bellinger Montgomery isn't getting the really big contract, the long term contract they want, the idea of a short term but really high dollar money, which again, it seems like a ton of money, but the Royals, the danger isn't giving somebody even $40 million for 1 year or $80 million for 2. It's the problem is giving them $25 million for 6 years, and by year 3 you want to release the guy, right? So keep your options open, and always remember you have a choice, and never say never. That's the takeaway from this, I think, for the Royals.
Yeah.
For the first time in my life, I'm giving him the last word.
Yep, there it is. I will let that be the last word. Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Always, we love your work. The Joe Sheehan Baseball Newsletter. We encourage everybody to check that out. It's Joe's got a lot of great stuff in there. It's fantastic, and we always enjoy our time when you chat with us. So thanks for spending some time with us, buddy. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, fellas.
There he is, Joe Sheehan, for the good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli. My name is Soren Petro. Don't forget, GAN Asphalt and Concrete. One contractor, all things parking lot. Let them know you heard about him here on the Kaufman Corner. We'll let Joe get down to the joys of the, I assume that's your siren going off there in New York City.
Yeah.
The joys of
It's a large market siren.
It's a what?
A large market siren.
There it is. It's a big market siren. Yeah, it's the money they're hauling away. That's what it is. We appreciate everybody joining us here on Kaufman Corner. We will see you next week, and thank you very much for joining us.